What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 65 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I, of course, am your host, Kyle Roscoe, and what an unbelievable card we have for you guys. Bettin and Boozin is in the big time, ladies and gentlemen. As we cover the late pick five and all stakes. We'll talk about both stakes before the late pick five briefly. And for the Tampa Bay Derby card this Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs, it's going to be an absolutely, and it's honestly a very, very good sequence. There's a lot of different ways you can go, a lot of very good horses as well making the trip over, especially from the Chad Brown barn, as he looks to make a 2019 Arlington Million out of it and make this day the Chad Brown show. But of course, we will go over that and everything involved with the stakes and late pick five at Tampa Bay Downs here shortly coming up. But guys, we're going to go quickly through the peripherals as we always do, and then we'll get right into the handicapping. As you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen and of course below the video player, please hit the like button and please hit subscribe. It's the easiest way and best way to help us out and let us know that you guys are supporting the channel and you guys are liking the content that we put out. We greatly appreciate it. Let's get we were going for like goals before. Let's try and get, since this is a massive show, let's try and get at least 60 likes on this video, if not 70. Would love to see the support as we cover, like I said, a massive card for this week. As you also see scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now, our next show will be tomorrow. That'll be Howard, Pete, and Paul on Picks and Ponies episode 39, also at 8 p.m. Eastern, covering the Beholder Mile card this Saturday at Santa Anita Park. Shout out West Coast Bias on the show, but that is going to be another fantastic card as well. You're not going to want to miss it if you're playing the races on Saturday. Again, that's tomorrow, Thursday, March 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Come show out for that as well. Guys, if you're more of an audio listener, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor is where we post every single episode, not only of Bettin and Boozin, but every single episode that's posted to the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel. Please go, if you're more of an audio listener or not, please go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. Guys, the Power Picks still going very strong, almost at, I actually didn't even update that number beforehand, almost at 550 picks over the last 2 3/4 years. And we are still in the positive only for $4 a week. And you get 2 full racing cards of write-ups, spot plays, pick 5 plays, price plays, anything you guys need to be successful on a certain Saturday and every weekend. Only $4 a weekend, but billed monthly at $15.99 through Patreon, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast, also in the description below. And you guys can find previous editions of the Power Picks or anything about us at hhhracingpodcast.com. And I just want to give a special shout out, guys. As you guys all know, our merch store has closed as of last Sunday, but thank you to all who ended up purchasing either Bettin and Boozin or HHH Racing Podcast merch. Fingers crossed that they will be in by next week's show. I'm hoping, of course, because we fly out to the NA. For those of you that watched last night's show, Howard's show covering the NHC preview, we leave on Thursday to go out to Vegas. So I'm, fingers crossed it gets in for that, and of course for the show on Wednesday. But special shout out and special thank you so much for supporting the podcast and buying your merch. But guys, we're going to get right into it here. We're going to, of course, if you're here and you guys have opinions, I know the card just did come out, but if you have opinions, please comment in the live chat. We read every single chat. And of course, even if you guys didn't handicap and you guys are handicapping along with us as we're going through the races, please comment who you like in the live chat. But guys, we're going to get right into it here with my 2 co-hosts for tonight. Himself, West Coast Bias, now at the University of Kentucky, Noah Maher, and formerly from Chicago, now at The Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Boys, what's going on tonight?
Shout out Tampa. This is a hell of a card.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is an unreal sequence. Certainly excited to, we made it. We really made it big time now, boys, now that we're getting to cover something like this.
Boys are in the big time, ladies and gentlemen. As I touched on before, the boss, and this will be my one dig, the boss man usually gives us, he takes the good stuff. No, we get the good stuff this week. We lobbied for it. But anyway, I'm just giving him crap.
Kyle threatened to quit the show if we didn't get this
there we go. That's what we're talking about. Give us some good stuff or else. Either way, guys, like I said, we're going to cover every single stakes race for you guys. The stakes races out of the pick 5 are races number 6 and 7. Race number 6 is the Challenger Stakes. Pretty short field in that one, field of 6. and the Columbia Stakes, which is not a short field, and it's not an easy race by any means. But we're going to cover those pretty quick, basically give our top picks and a little bit of analysis for you guys. And then we're going to go straight into the deep dive into the late pick 5. But first of all, we're going to show who's here. Katie is here. Katie, thanks so much. Of course, you're here. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Stephen Vanderbrook, hello all. And as a very astute viewer, he says, smash that like button, please. Again, guys, we're going for 60 to 70 likes this episode. Please, please, please smash that like button. Paul Conlon's here, of course. 30 days to Keeneland, absolutely. Counting down the days, of course. Hopefully, I'll get to see you there this year as I did last fall, Paul. Thanks for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Racing Down Windows, of course, here. Ray Conley's here. Pops is here. Ray Conley, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Ray Cromley, thanks for joining the show, man. Sean Kane is here. Stephen Vanderbrook, I don't know what Paul's ranted this week. I'm going to take a wild guess, and it's going to have something to do with some major New York news that came out this week. That's going to be my guess. I do not know for sure. But if boss says, is that a threat? Of course it's not a threat. Where's Grundery in him? I'm telling you, Stolen Breeze, absolutely. And Cool Kev, salute to you, my friend. But salute to everyone else. Let's crack a beer here, boys, and let's get her going. Race number 6. Again, very brief. We're going to give 30 seconds of analysis and our picks. You'll see them at the bottom of the screen, as you will with every single race. Come up on the screen here. Charlie, since you're next to me on the picks, I'm going to let you go first. It is a field of 6 in the Challenger Stakes going a mile and a 16th on the dirt for 4-year-olds and up. A little bit of an older males race. As you get a field of 6, the morning line favorite has to be Skippy Longstocking, I would assume. Gaff Leone, Saffy Joseph coming off of, and I'll just show the PPs as you guys talk about the horses. But Skippy Longstocking, the old zero buyer angle, Charlie.
Yeah, for me, this is a simple race. Don't overthink it. Obviously, it's a small but decent field. I think this is 100% Skippy Longstocking. Look, that race, horse got pulled up and walked off. You just have to live with it. I mean, I remember when I was watching from the draw from the start, when Skippy Longstocking drew to the outside, the ownership group and trainers were already pretty upset, and they didn't really have any good, feeling headed into that race at all. So for me, you just have to draw a line through it, move on, regroup. The horse is training fine. Doesn't really seem like anything's wrong with Skippy Longstocking. Again, the class of the field, the figures certainly back up. I don't think in any ways this horse has lost a step. And I think this is Skippy Longstocking's race to lose. Obviously, you have to respect Dynamic One, even though I was very adamant that this horse is washed and was making fun of the horse when we were talking about it last time. And I didn't care that Irad was aboard. For some reason, he doesn't believe the horse is washed because he's aboard once again, and the horse is working forwardly. So have to respect that one. And then all these other horses, honestly, from a competition and figures perspective, don't really fit. I don't even think Dynamic One necessarily does, but the old back figures do. I just think this is Skippy Longstocking's race to lose.
No, anything you want to touch on?
No, I agree with Charlie. I think if Skippy kind of runs this race to the best of his abilities, I think it's going to be pretty tough in here. I am willing to give Dynamic one more shot, just because of the difficulty of that race last time, and he seems like he's kind of training like his old self. So really on the win end, I pretty much thought it was one of those two.
Frankly, man, he can beat me. Granted, he might have needed a race, and obviously second off the layoff, he goes into the Pegasus, which this is obviously an easier spot, but I just feel like there's other horses in here that are a little more forwardly working than Dynamic One, who's obviously his best. He could run back to those races in 22, but for me, I would have to see it. For me, I'm looking to Sherlock's Jewel and Dash Attack underneath combine a complete pace play. As I bring up the pace, and then we'll move on. You can see Timeform has it as favoring front runners, Skippy being the one in front. The number 6, Impacto, towards the second. And you'll see Timeform numbers. Impacto is a little slow for me, as was the Rail Horse. Dynamic One actually doesn't even really have that good of Timeform numbers as comparative to the others. And we talk about comparing speed figures all the time on this show, that, you can't just take one as the end-all be-all. Something that I've developed over the past year is learning to compare and see where these discrepancies are. And Dynamic One definitely has that type of discrepancy, being that his best time form somewhere 15 to 20 points is 90, somewhere in that 95 range, while his best buyer is a 99. So not too big of a discrepancy, but it's still worth noting. I just think Skippy gets a really good setup here, guys, and the pace structure should favor him greatly. I'm going 3-4-5. That's Skippy Longstocking, Sherlock's Jewel, Dash Attack. Charlie's going 3-2-5. Skippy Longstocking, Dynamic One, Dash Attack, and Noah's going the same way. I'm going to switch over race number 7, guys. Again, these two are going to be very brief. So no, I'll start with you as I started with Charlie. And I'll tell you what, guys, the Columbia Stakes is not an easy race by any means, even though we are pretty similar picks wise here. Noah, you and I are both going with number 3, Move to Gold for Chad. Charlie's going a different way, In a Jam for Jose Ortiz and Mark Casse. So this will actually be a good one. Noah, I'll talk about the number 3, Move to Gold, and then we'll throw it to Charlie and talk about In a Jam. What'd you like most about Move to Gold?
Yeah, Move to Gold real quickly, just because you've got him on top. I just like the way that he won last time. I know he's been off for a little while, but just kind of the way that he won. And I think Spirit Prince is a pretty decent horse. So I think, obviously, we know Chad Brown is capable to bring a horse and get him into the winner's circle off this kind of layoff. So out of a difficult race, it's not a strong opinion, but I thought he was probably the horse to beat.
I mean, I agree with you completely. Obviously, I have this horse on top, and you stuck it out of my mouth. I really love the way that he won that last race. It was very professional down the stretch, and Spirit Prince got a much better trip than Move to Gold did. He kind of came up the rail in that. Obviously, we're not going to show the replay as we're going through this a little bit briefly, but I love the way he won that last race. Chad's been working him down at Payson Park, working forwardly. Now gets Irad aboard, gets this little bit of a pretty, not an easy spot, but comparatively to the horses he's been running against, i.e. the best horse in the entire land, Copper Missile, if you know that name. Anyway, I mean, beating this horse, now coming back to win the Iwad, I mean, this horse could take another step forward coming in to his 3-year-old year. But Charlie, you're going a different way. Real quick, talk about In a Jam, then we'll move on to the late pick 5.
Yeah, for me, even though I do think it's open and there's some other interesting horses in here, like obviously, the 8 Full Nelson runs well at Tampa. I just don't think this horse will be able to get away with another slow pace. I thought Talk was interesting after running in the juvenile turf, but I just think that horse will have too much to do and the race is too short. So for me, it really does just come down to the 3 and the 7. Obviously, you guys touched on Move to Gold a lot. I like, in a good way, the inexperience the horse has, because I think it means that Move to Gold has, a lot more room to improve in a good way. And as you touched on, the horse working forwardly and that big step forward from the debut. Again, shout out to Copper Missile. Yeah, for In a Jam, look, for me, I like the consistency. I understand that this horse kind of seems to just want to run like that low 80 buyer figure. But for me, I don't necessarily think that won't be enough. I like that the horse is working so forwardly. And I also just like the setup for In a Jam. I think this horse could sit just off the 8 and be pretty forwardly placed and not have too much work to do and then get the first jump. And I also just don't want to play against this horse anymore, because this was a horse that I faded back-to-back races where, I had this horse underneath. It's just I wanted to beat the price, and I didn't think the horse was worth it. And, they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. I can't put the blame on you. So there's 2 times I tried to beat this horse and couldn't. I'm not going to let it happen 3 times in a row. So I'm putting In a Jam on top.
All right. So Noah's throwing in Eminem lyrics last week. Now Charlie's throwing J. Cole lyrics this week. This is absolutely wild. Anyway, I believe it was 3 times. Can't put the blame on me, but it's fine. It is what it is. I just think, like I said, Move to Gold could set up really nicely for. Last thing we'll show is the pace scenario before we move on. Timeform has it as a fast pace. El Principito with the dirt form coming out and going out for the lead, while a lot of horses not too far behind him. You'll see the 3 Move to Gold in the back along with, and you'll see Charlie's number 7 In a Jam going to be a little bit more forwardly placed, as he said. Going to get the jump on the 3 Move to Gold. We'll just see if he's good enough. But guys, let's move on to the pick 5 here. I'm going 3, 10, 7. That's Move to Gold, Fulminio, and In a Jam. Charlie's going 7, 3, 9. In a Jam, Move to Gold, Talk. Noah's going 3, 7, 9, which is Move to Gold, In a Jam, and Talk. Guys, let's go on to the late pick 5 here, which is the main sequence we are going to cover and deep dive into tonight for you guys. The first race is a handicap. So it is not a graded stake to start out the pick 5, but it is a really nice handicap stake going 7 furlongs on the dirt. This is the longest that Tampa Bay's they have to run a 1 turn. So 7 furlongs out of the chute at Tampa Bay Downs, going a field of 10 with the morning line favorite most likely going to be the horse on the inside, the number 1, Sterling Silver for Castellano and Thomas Albertrani. Second choice is probably going to be somewhere between Dream Concert and maybe Poema could be one for Kathleen O'Connell. Either one of those. She runs really well at Tampa Bay Downs. And of course, since we're covering this on Wednesday, guys, we do not have morning lines. So of course, we're not going to know, prospective odds or anything like that. So bear with us as we try to guess, who's going to be the morning line favorite, where we can get our value and so on. Because I mean, we could assume a horse is going to be 5-1, and all of a sudden the horse is 2-1 on the morning line, and it shit is what shit is. There's nothing you can do about it. I'll switch over the picks right now, but guys, we are all going with the number 1 Sterling Silver for pretty good reason, I think. And Noah, I'll let you touch on this horse first because I know you feel really strongly about him. Not that the rest of us don't, but I know later he's going to play a big part in your best bets that we give out at the end of Bettin and Boozin. For those of you that are not familiar, we do not give out a late pick 5 necessarily like the Picks and Ponies guys do, but to make it a little bit more user friendly for you guys, and you guys can bounce off ideas with us. I think best bets is definitely a better target for what our demographic we are trying to reach. So we are going to give best bets at the end, and Noah, like I said, Sterling Silver is going to play a pretty big part in that.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a she, so you can take a drink. And second, out of the races that we're covering, I'd probably say that it's not far off that Sterling Silver is probably the most likely winner in any of these races. What she'll be at post time, I'm not sure. But just looking at her form, I just think she gets a pretty good pace setup in here. You can excuse the turf effort last time. You can excuse the ballerina because Echo Zulu and Good Night Olive are frankly freaks in that division. I guess the only kind of knock that you can make about her is last year she made kind of the same move where she ran at Tampa in mid-March after a little bit of a long layoff, and she was a little bit flat.
If you want to be funny enough, no, I'm pretty sure that's the same exact handicap on this card.
I was thinking the same thing. But I mean, she did run flat, but I just think she's a different horse now. She's kind of proven that she can run that high number. That's frankly a lot better than this field. So if she doesn't win, I'd be quite surprised.
Charlie, to you, I mean, you think the same thing. I just thought pace scenario wise, Sterling Silver was going to sit a very, very good spot.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's good. I mean, the horse is working forwardly. I think she'll sit a nice ground saving trip. The figures fit. And again, there's no touchdown. I mean, for me, again, we'll get to our best bets later. This is a no-brainer for me. I agree. I think this is one of the easier races in the sequence. I mean, when you see a horse running against Echo Zulu and Goodnight Olive, and then you see who the horse is running against in this race, it's just a no-brainer. I mean, me, I also always like my stalkers and closers. I don't really like going for those horses that are just going to, sprint. There's no one really in this race outside of that horse that really impressed me. I mean, I'll go into the other numbers. I mean, the reason I went with Dream Concert was pretty straightforward. We talk about this all the time. It's just the pace angle. If I'm going to go with a horse that's going to be off the pace, if I want to, hedge my bet to have another horse there, I got to go with someone that's going to be on the other end, because I don't think anybody can close as well as this one horse. I need a speed horse. I think Dream Concert could be the speed of the speed. And I do think these last few efforts have been really impressive. I mean, I know these 83 figures aren't big, but at least it's consistent. And if you look around this field, putting up low 80s consistently is better than everybody besides the one. And then to the outside, for me, honestly, the angle was, look, Irad's picking up this horse, so he must, see that there's some ability. And I did think the effort last time out was a nice step forward for a horse that, had shown some flashes at Gulfstream Park where you were thinking, okay, now maybe the move to Tampa would make it even easier because, in theory, usually Tampa competition isn't quite as strong. Did not go well at all the first time. Horse just evened out and didn't have anything left. And to be fair, it was a really slow pace, and this horse was more forwardly placed than I'm sure she would have wanted to be, but bounced back last time nicely, defeating Hi Hello, How Are You was in this race, which is a great name, by the way. Love listening to the announcer calls for that horse. But that was the third choice underneath. But I completely agree with Noah. I think this is Sterling Silver's race to lose.
I mean, you guys see my picks. I couldn't agree more. Charlie touched on the 3. Again, completely in agreement with that. The 10 just looked a little slow to me. That race at Gulfstream going 1 turn 7 furlong definitely fits in this spot. But anything else, it kind of seems like that number sticks out like a sore thumb on this horse's form. This horse looks more of like a high 60s, low 70s type horse, which might be good enough for underneath spot, but I'm willing to look somewhere else. Noah, you're thinking same thing with me here. I thought this was a very interesting move. Rapoli had this horse with actually it was probably a private purchase would be my guess, because Rapoli doesn't have horses with Nacho Correas, who has been running this horse all over the place. West Coast in hometown Chicago, where Nacho trained so many horses at Arlington over the years. I just thought this was a really interesting purchase for them, and now getting Pletcher on this horse makes this horse even more intriguing.
Yeah, you got a point. Pletcher can definitely, step her up in this case. I just thought she was one that could kind of sit the similar trip as the one, and according to the pace projector, it looks like that's pretty much true. So if she sits that trip, I don't know if she's necessarily good enough as the one, but I think she's going to get a pretty good setup, and you get Tyler aboard. So definitely seems to be one live underneath. And then Dream Concert I had in third, who we've already touched on. I thought she was a little bit versatile. She didn't necessarily need the lead. So if there's some horses that are some cheap speed that kind of go out there and, can't handle the 7 furlongs, I think she's able to kind of sit off and maybe get the junk on the first 2 that I've got in my picks.
I mean, like I said, exactly the way I'm thinking. Not too creative in here for us guys. There's just a lot of speed on paper in this race. You can see Timeform has it as a fast pace as well. I showed the pace projector before, but 5 and the 7 with the 2 not close behind. Dream Concert, we talked about getting the jumps, going to be sitting right off the speed. Chitara is going to be right next to Sterling Silver, which you touched on, Noah, and looks to get a very similar trip. I just think the one is it's basically a superior animal to everybody else, but obviously we'll see come Saturday if she sits a good enough trip. I'm going 1, 3, 4. That is Sterling Silver, Dream Concert, and then Chitara. Charlie's going 1, 3, 10, Sterling Silver, Dream Concert, Easy Come, Easy Go, and Noah's going 1, 4, 3. That's Sterling Silver, Chitara, Dream Concert. Guys, going to switch over to race number 9, and that is the second leg in this late pick 5. It is the Hillsborough Stakes, a grade 2 going 1 mile and 1/8 on the turf. And although this is it's not a very big field by any means, you want to talk about a quality field of fillies and mares, guys. This is it. Field of 8, morning line favorite going to be it's going to be pretty up for grabs here. Fluffy Socks might get the nod for Irad and Chad Brown, I would assume. But you have horses underneath, market segmentation, the other Chad Brown, as we always touch on, Star Fortress, the horse that ran absolutely hole in the wind at Churchill Downs 2 back, and then Elusive Princess, who I touched on with the boys, is still to date the biggest win bet I've ever made in my entire life is on Elusive Princess, sitting there with Howard, Matt, Brad Anderson, and all the boys in the pouring rain at Saratoga for Whitney weekend this year. And not in the Whitney, not on anything like that. It was on some random grade 3 turf race that was an absolute bog out there, and that was still my biggest win bet to date, and probably one of my biggest opinions I've ever had. Going to Elusive Princess. But we're going to switch over the picks right now, guys, and you'll see we have all different horses on top, which is actually really interesting in this race. Like I said, it's a small field, but there's a lot of different ways you can go. Charlie, I'm going to go to you first. You have the most prospective morning line favorite on top, being the number 1, Fluffy Socks, of course, for Irad and Chad. What'd you like most about her in this spot?
Yeah, I really do think races 9 and 10 are the 2 hardest races in this sequence by far. I think they're the 2 most quality fields and exciting. I can't really wait to get ready to talk about race 10. But yeah, I mean, look, for Fluffy Socks, the consistency is there. And, for those who watch the show enough know that that's something I love to look for, is a horse where you never really have to wonder or question, will she run a good effort? It's always going to be, somewhere in those low to mid 90s, which is certainly good enough to win this race. I mean, obviously the biggest concern with Fluffy Socks is, she tends to leave herself with so much to do. And I do think that getting that mile and 1/8, could be a good thing. We'll have to see. I mean, I know we've touched on how sometimes getting an extra distance isn't always good for closers, and I get that 3 back, it didn't work out, but I also think that was obviously a really slow pace, which is not what Fluffy Socks can afford. This horse absolutely needs at least a moderate pace to close into. Obviously getting Irad aboard, and again, we've talked about Chad Brown has his struggles at Gulfstream this year, but he tends to do really well at Tampa Bay. So again, for me in a race that I think is wide open, I mean, if I was playing this race vertically, I probably wouldn't love Fluffy Socks just because you're not going to get great value. But horizontally, this would absolutely be a horse I'd have to put on my ticket. I mean, I'll let you talk more about Elusive Princess, Kyle. Obviously, that was your huge win bet call with just a massive price as the favorite at $1.35. Huge on your part. But Elusive Princess certainly obviously makes a ton of sense too. I think what's more appealing is this horse probably will have less work to do, coming to the final turn, which I think could certainly make this horse a wild card. And then Star Fortress, I mean, I get last time out wasn't a great performance, but it wasn't a terrible performance either. I think a lot of people didn't really, and you could see how the horse was not dead on the board, but, didn't live up to that morning line price. You could tell a lot of people thought that first performance was maybe a little fluky, but this horse could certainly still run back to a respectable enough effort to win this race.
Yeah, with Star Fortress, actually, Noah, I'll let you touch on her as well. But I want to go to I want to still talk about Fluffy Socks here for a sec, because I have the horse in second. Noah, you don't have this horse anywhere, and that's one thing that I want to touch on real quick. And I understand why, and I think I understand why, is that she always gives her run, but without a pace setup, without a pace scenario, she doesn't get the job done. And the fact of the matter is that this race is pretty deep in a lot of different ways you can go, and horses coming from the back. I don't hate throwing Fluffy Socks out in this spot.
Yeah, there were two things to me that kind of, inclinated me to kind of throw her out. If I were to play it, horizontally, I'd definitely have her in there. But the first one you touched on was the speed. I mean, unless market segmentation sets crazy fractions off the layoff, I mean, I think Fluffy Socks is going to have way too much to do. And second of all, isn't the mile and 8 too far for her? I mean, I think the mile 16th hit her pretty well. I think she's a little more effective there. But, I mean, she's run some decent races at a mile and 8. You go back to the Modesty at Churchill and the Matchmaker at Monmouth. But, I mean, those were almost 2 years ago. And she's 6 now, and I don't really know if she's going to be all that effective, Kyle.
And we talk about this all the time, right, Noah? Is a lot of people, when they first look, a lot of people that don't, play too heavily into this game, they look at this program and they're like, oh, this horse is closing in a mile and a 16th. If this horse goes a little bit longer, she can get the job done. And that's not necessarily always the case, guys, in the fact that, maybe she really just has a really devastating kick at a mile and a 16th. And going a mile and 1/8, it might just be a little too long for her. We see it in the Diana. I mean, that's a hard spot at Saratoga, but in the Athenia, granted slow pace, but you keep going through her form, guys. And the Matchmaker, all the way back in 22, still couldn't get the job done. She was only 2 lengths back at a mile and 1/8 and started, she headed and then started to fade back a little bit. She got to a neck in the Modesty, started to fade back. I just think a mile and 1/8, I might agree with you, Noah, that it might just be a little too far for her. And as I said, a lot of people will look at the form, and I could be completely wrong in this, but they think Fluffy Socks can get the mile and 1/8 and could end up getting the win just based on that she can't get there at a mile and a 16th or a mile. And that's not always the case. So I feel like that's why she's also going to take a lot of money in this spot, which is why I'd be looking other places. And Noah, I'm going to start with you, man. Market segmentation. You have the other Chad Brown, as we continue to touch on. What'd you like most about her?
Yeah, well, I mean, I touched on the speed. She kind of seems to be it. I don't know how legitimate of speed she'll be. I mean, she's definitely very talented.
Yep.
She won the New York 2 back and beat a really good field. Didia and McCullough came back and won. I just think
Diddy
I don't think Chad
pretty good. Diddy came back to a pretty good race recently, might I add.
Yeah, she definitely did. I just kind of don't think that Chad would have entered her in here if she kind of wasn't ready off this long layoff. I will say it's not a strong opinion. I will say I kind of dislike Fluffy Socks more than I like market segmentation. But I think it's a tough race in general. I think there's a lot of definitely major players in here. We've touched on Star Fortress, and then Elusive Princess, I thought was interesting who you've got on top, Kyle.
And I promise this is not like she's in my heart for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a bet with my heart play. I think she really sits a good trip in here, guys. And I know it's a little bit off the layoff, but if you want to see a good stat, Arnaud Delacour off of a 180 plus day layoff. I'll just do it real quick for you guys. Greater than 180 days. How about 23 for 85? How about 27% off the layoff? With a pretty decent average price payout. She's going to be forwardly placed. She's going to be sitting right off the speed. And if Fluffy Socks has too much to do, and maybe market segmentation doesn't really class up to these types of horses, running a pretty good fourth behind Mauge and Mission of Joy while winning the Saratoga Oaks Invitational, granted on the soft ground, That's another reason why I like her, but I'll get there in a second. I think she sits a very good trip in this spot. Alvarado picks up the mount while Flavian is still in California, running on the Beholder Mile Stakes Day. So that the jockey switch doesn't concern me whatsoever. It's J. Foxwoods. If you remember a horse named Olympiad, Junior Alvarado rode that horse pretty good. I'm a big fan of Elusive Princesses, and the fact that Florida has been getting and will get a little bit of rain before this card on Saturday makes me like Elusive Princess even more. So I'm hoping for somewhere around 3-1 range, granted with Fluffy Socks and other than that in this race, and I'm just really trying to key in on Elusive Princess to sit a very good trip in this spot. And the last horse I want to touch on, guys, is Star Fortress, then we'll move on. I feel like even though I don't have her anywhere, the boys have her in third and second, respectively. I just feel like she's going to get a little bit disrespected off that last race. And Charlie said, I mean, it really wasn't a bad effort. She got kind of steadied on the first turn. I don't know how much that really hurt her in terms of finishing position, but being only 5 lengths back to Didia, it was pretty, it was a very heavy finish. I think a lot of people are going to discount her after this race. I think if you're playing horizontals, I think the biggest idea here is, guys, you either need to stand, as Charlie says, you need to stand on business with either one horse in this race, whether that's Fluffy Socks, Market Segmentation, Elusive Princess, and you'll get, a 5-2, 3-1, 7-2 single, or you have to try and spread in this race, maybe go 4 deep, 5 deep, and then have to skinny down other places. I just feel like this could be one to really bolster that ticket while keeping it at a reasonable price, while still getting a good price for that horse. But anyway, guys, we're going to move on to race number 10 here. I'm going 7-1-2. That is Elusive Princess, Fluffy Socks, and Market Segmentation. Charlie's going 1-7-8. Fluffy Socks, Elusive Princess, Star Fortress. Noah's going 2-8-7. Market Segmentation, Star Fortress, Elusive Princess. Guys, going to move on to race number 10. Let's check into the chat real quick. David Piscopo. I don't think I've seen that name before, David. Thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. He says 2-8 all. And, we talk about this. I'm assuming that's a trifecta, David, in that regard. He going Market Segmentation, Noah, who you liked, with Star Fortress, who I talked about, is going to be a little disrespected, I think. So that I don't mind that play at all. And you kind of get that, you round out that third position. As you guys all know who've watched the show, I'm not the biggest fan of trifectas, mainly because I'm much more confident in that I have the winner rather than I can pick some random horse to come third. Obviously, you can key it. You can do all different types of ways, but good luck with that. I don't mind that ticket at all. I think there's so many, many ways you can go. And Boss says, I know Patrick Kuenzel, who's another co-host of the show, reffing basketball and doing his own job. I know Patrick Kuenzel loves Market Segmentation. He made a great bet on her last summer at Belmont. You would know because you were there. That is absolutely correct. But yeah, Noah is a big fan. I mean, Patrick is a big fan of Market Segmentation. Guys, going to move on to race number 10 here as I switch over the PPs and the Equibase entries. And this race, guys, you want to talk about a good race and a doozy of a race. It is race number 10, is the Florida Oaks, a grade 3 for $200,000, going a mile and 16th on the turf, full field of 12. And there's a horse that, again, for those of you that watch this show, another horse after my own heart in this race. And Noah, my friend, that is what I'm talking about. Going at the number 11, Dynamic Pricing, Jose Ortiz takes the mount for Chad Brown. Charlie, you're going to go first here. You're going a different way with a horse who ran a really good race last time, I know you were on last time at Gulfstream. At Gulfstream as well. The number 5, Waukesha for Belmont and Junior Alvarado.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really covered it well with our top threes. I think we all kind of have it, and I'm happy Noah included the 6 because that was the one horse I was flipping back and forth between putting on there as well. Yeah, look, last time out, I mean, I can't really understand why, but this horse opened 8-1 morning line. I'm not going to go into why I believe that's the case, but certainly a surprising start. And horse got heavily bet down to favoritism to where the horse should have been. And look, honestly, it was just not a good trip at all. It was not Junior's fault. It was just very unlucky. Ozara, who, we talk about, I mean, obviously last time out wasn't good, but in 2 races in a row got to sit a dream trip and ended up winning. Look, the 5 horse, she wants to be forwardly placed, not on the lead, but wants to be a couple lengths off, sit in a nice stalking trip. And that didn't work out last time. Got, an awkward start, didn't really have anywhere to go, ended up wide for most of that trip, and then eventually showed that rally. The problem was, again, Ozara got the jump, and then Life's an Audible, who was obviously sitting at the way back on a pretty decent pace, was able to get to take advantage of that long kick. For me, I think with a cleaner trip and, sitting more of that stalking trip without having to go 3 wide the entire time and a cleaner start, I absolutely think this horse could be the horse to beat. I like that, that she's working forwardly. I think the trip makes a lot of sense. I also just think this is, again, I think this is a very, very, and I'm wondering what you guys thought. I think this is a very, very competitive and exciting field that could kind of get overlooked. I think this is a very talented field. Moving into who I have underneath, I'll let you guys touch more on dynamic pricing, but I thought that effort was very, very solid last time. The horse, I don't know how to describe it, but to me, maybe you guys can explain it better. I mean, the gallop out was great, but I thought the horse never really got started on that rally, like was rallying without getting to really show that full kick. So that's kind of what interested me there. And then with the 7, that is Style Points, who was also out of that race. I just like that this horse is more forwardly placed. So I kind of feel like, again, I have a nice balance of a horse off the pace, forwardly placed, and then stalking. But that was my kind of angle with the top 3. I know you guys are very similar, but I'm curious why I'm going to be wrong with my 5.
Well, no, I'll go to you because we'll show the replay here. This was a very good race in the Sweet Chant. I was all over dynamic pricing this day. This was the race with Life's an Audible. I was trying to beat Life's an Audible in this race. And Milliat, who was another popular horse in this race. I'll show it from the top of the turn, Noah, and we'll kind of go through. You'll see, so right here, you'll see dynamic pricing is the number 6 here in the Klarovich colors. Life's an Audible is the number 1 back here. So, and I'll let it go through the top of the turn. Noah, I'll let you talk through the race.
Yeah, I mean, throughout most of the race, I thought dynamic pricing got a pretty good trip. You can see that she's kind of mid-pack now. Life's an Audible kind of makes an early move and gets a little bit to her outside. So I think, whoever was on her that day maybe thought she might have been a little bit tighter than kind of expected. As a turf horse, you kind of want to see him kind of swing out and get some clear run. I think Life's an Audible was definitely the best horse that day. But I think the trip was a little bit sneaky. And then to Charlie's point, the gallop out here is what I was definitely keying on. I think she's got a lot more left in the tank here. It's very frequent that you can see her, but you can kind of see her on the right side. And then
where is she?
Yeah.
Where'd she go? She's all the way past is what she is. I'll tell you what, Noah. As I said, I loved dynamic pricing that day. I thought she was a really good up and coming Chad horse. And honestly, I was just trying to beat Life's an Audible at 6-5 is what she was most of the time. Ended up going off at 9-5. Man, once she finally straightened out, you could see in that replay, she was really bouncing all over the place, kind of pinballing between horses. I think Irad's early move on Life's an Audible was the one that won that race because it was able to keep dynamic pricing to the inside and having to kind of work in between horses for a young filly rather than being able to swing outside and having a clear run. I think dynamic pricing with the draw and where she's going to sit, and plus with this pace scenario, as I showed before, there's everyone and their mother wants to go out for this lead. Realistically, you see 1, 2, 3, 3 above 100 and at least 2 more above 95. It's just going to be a very hot pace up front, and with dynamic pricing drawn to the outside while still being somewhat in touch with the field, I think is really going to help her out. And the fact that she doesn't need to be forwardly placed, the post doesn't concern me one bit. They go from the inside shoot at Tampa Bay at 1 mile and a 16th and at 1 mile and an 1/8. So again, no concerns there for me, even though people say it's almost like a third turn in a way because they do have to come back onto the regular course. But the fact that she's going to drop middle of the pack does not bother me one bit. I love dynamic pricing in this spot. And if she can really show that she's grown and she's becoming a professional, second time off a little bit of a layoff for Chad, I think she's going to be a very big reckoning force in that Chad Brown barn. And I think she can show it on Saturday. But I will show some comments here. Scott says Clement has been winning in Tampa at these turf races, and he absolutely has. I'll go show him, and that is, of course, what horse is he? Is he the number?
Style
he's the
points.
7, right? Style points. So I have in third. You can see, Clement's winning 26%. A horse also coming out of that sweet chant, Noah. That was the horse on the inside that ended up edging out dynamic pricing for second. You don't have this horse anywhere, but Charlie, you talked about this horse having this horse third. I just think she did get a very good setup last time. She was on the rail the whole time and was able to kind of spurt away, and while still being caught by a really nice horse in Life's an Audible. But I like that she's going to be up forward. I like the versatility that you pointed out, and the fact that if I'm going to have dynamic pricing from the back, who's very good and who's going to get a jump on that if they don't end up going fast as the form says, who is going to be the one that's going to take that? And I think Style Points is definitely the horse to look forward to. Noah, I'll let you kind of close out this conversation here. You have the number 6, Austere, who is a horse coming out of the Juvenile Fillies turf while winning that race at Kentucky Downs in preparation for that race. I'm going to be the Juvenile Fillies turf, guys. You want to talk about a hard race at the Breeders' Cup last year. That's one to definitely look at. But a horse who ran pretty well in that race is coming back first time for Brendan Walsh.
Yeah, well, she also really didn't do anything wrong, leading up to that race. That was definitely a tough and wide open field in that Juvenile Fillies turf. I just think it's interesting to me. I don't take too much into account kind of jockeying gymnastics, but I think this is one account that is very important where Tyler Gaffalione hops off of Style Points and stays on Austere. To me, as a handicapper, that's a good sign. I guess the one concern maybe would be Walsh is not a guy that I typically see shipped to Tampa. Sorry,
correct.
But just the fact that he's shipping here, I think it's an optimistic move. And if she improves off that Breeders' Cup, she's definitely a factor in this race.
And look, high risk. Shout out High Risk. Haven't seen you in a while. Good. Thanks for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Austere is definitely one. And I feel like if there's a race where you're going to, again, it's either you're standing on business or you're going elsewhere. And I feel like if there's one race, as I talked about, to go elsewhere in, I feel like this is one where you can go elsewhere and still get a pretty good price. Austere is that one horse that I was debating between Style Points and Austere for third, as you touched on, Charlie, when you first went over your picks. I feel like you can go either way. I just really like that Sweet Chant race, and I understand that Style Points got a really, really nice trip. The layoff is going to hurt for Austere, as I show in the last. I think it's less than 180 days, if I'm not mistaken. November to March, it'll be only 5 months. But 17% for Brendan Walsh, of course, is not bad. And the one thing I wanted to touch on as well, Ray Cromley brings up a good point. The grass at Tampa Bay is somewhat different than Gulfstream, and I tend to agree with that. That Gulfstream's turf, a lot of preconceived notions is that it's very good up front and that you'll want to be forwardly placed. It's not necessarily the case on the Tampa Bay turf. A lot of the times it ends up playing fair, especially with some moisture in the ground. I feel like Tampa Bay has a higher probability to play fair than the Gulfstream course. So that's a good point I wanted to touch on. I actually wanted to touch on it earlier with the turf races, but thank you, Ray Cromley, for bringing it up. Really appreciate it. But Austere, to finish up my point, is definitely not one you want to take lightly and probably include on your tickets if you're playing horizontally. But guys, we're going to move on to the big one here, Tampa Bay Derby, in just a second. But I'm going 11.57. That is dynamic pricing. Waskasu? God, yeah, we said it wrong last time. I know it's a hard one. That's for damn sure. Waskasu in second, and the number 7 Style Points in third. Charlie's going 5.11.7. Waskasu, dynamic pricing, and Style Points. Noah's going 11.65. That is dynamic pricing. Austere, Waskasu. I had to say it 3 times during that damn thing, but we made it through in the end. But guys, it's the big one time. It's the race 11. It is the Tampa Bay Derby. Of course, 50 points. I believe it's a 50-point race, right? For the Kentucky Derby.
I think so. Yeah.
If it's not, of course, feel free to tell me that I'm a complete idiot in the comments. But also, guys, before we move on to the Tampa Bay Derby, there is a lot of people watching. We really, really, really appreciate you guys watching. If you could come over to the YouTube stream and please like the video. It's going to mean a lot to us, and it's going to show that you guys are enjoying the content that we're putting out. Again, youtube.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Please come over and give us a like. We're aiming for 60 to 70 likes on this episode. We would greatly appreciate. You guys are just going after, the boss is going after it, people in the chat. This is crazy. Either way, guys, let's move on to the big one. Again, race 11 is the Tampa Bay Derby. It is, of course, for 3-year-olds going a 1.16 miles on the Tampa Bay dirt course. Draws a field of 10, and albeit there's no standouts in this race by any means. Of course, you have the Iowa bred who won the prep for this, the Sam F. Davis in No More Time. The number 5 domestic product who ran second to Hades in the Holy Bull. And really after that, there's not a whole lot of horses that a lot of people recognize, but I feel like this is still a pretty competitive race. And you'll see on the bottom of the video player, Charlie and I are both going with the number 5 domestic product. And I'm sure Charlie's thinking the exact way I am, as we have the same top 3. But Noah, my friend, it's your time to shine, because you're not only going one different horse underneath, you're going with a different horse on top altogether. The number 1, Heartened, for Jose Ortiz and Todd Pletcher. And I'll switch over to the PPs right now. This is a really interesting pick, and I'm really interested to hear. He's definitely going to be a price coming off a maiden win at Tampa Bay. And I'll show the pace scenario as well. But what'd you like most about the number 1, Heartened?
Yeah, well, let's be honest. This is not the greatest rendition of the Tampa Bay Derby. But from a betting perspective, I thought it was pretty wide open. And I ended up going with Heartened. Last time he broke the maiden, the 74 on paper doesn't really seem all that impressive. And it wasn't a great field. But I just kind of like the way that he did it. He was a little in between kind of early on and just kind of, took the lead and took the race into his own matters. And then I thought he strided out really nicely late. With that being said, even though he broke the maiden last time, I think there is a little bit of versatility. He's shown that he's been able to sit off, even though he didn't get there. He's shown that he's been able to sit off in the last couple of races. And I think, even though the race 2 back was on the turf, I think that was a really nice race. In a Jam won that race, who we talked about earlier, Oscar's World, both of them came back and won. So I like the fact that this horse is moving forward, and I know the buyer is a little bit slow, but I don't think a great buyer is going to win this race. And if he can improve on that, I think he's going to be a little bit in the mix. Last thing, it would be a hell of a story if Pletcher had all these horses that didn't end up, all these 3-year-olds that are very talented and didn't end up running, and this was the one that got into the Derby.
Yeah, no kidding. Huh? That's honestly the wildest thing. Obviously headed by the 2-year-old champ, but Heartened is one thing, guys, and this horse is really interesting because this horse really hadn't showed any speed, which makes me feel a little bit dubious, but does get Jose aboard in this spot. Will have to run considerably faster, but could improve off that last race at Tampa Bay. And obviously Pletcher has some faith in this horse, putting this horse in the Tampa Bay Derby right off a win at Tampa Bay. And I feel like that intent angle is going to be the biggest thing for Heartened, and the fact that Pletcher has to see something in this horse to put him in a spot like this. So Noah, good luck. And that horse is probably most likely going to be at least high singles, if not low double digits. And you guys all know the slogan that I carry around is I'll never talk you off a double-digit horse. So no, good luck with yours. But Charlie, let's move on to our top pick, domestic product. And this is a horse I was a big fan of after the maiden win. He had a 1.1 miles at Aqueduct. And obviously Chad was too, throwing him into the Remsen, which you want to talk about. The Remsen doesn't produce anybody. I mean, Dornox, Sierra Leone, knock on wood, 2 Derby starters already based on points. And obviously Drumroll Priest came back to win the Jerome at Aqueduct. So 3, it's been a very, very live very live race all the way through. And now this horse comes back in the Holy Bull, and granted to a very flat fierceness, but ran behind a very good performance in Hades and was still coming on through the final 16th of a mile. I think this horse, it's a really good trip, Charlie.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, I agree with what Noah said earlier. I think this is a pretty weak field. And for me, the only horse that really remotely stood out for me is domestic product. I mean, you're talking about the late pick 5 sequence. I think, honestly, other than maybe, Sterling Silver that we touched on earlier, this for me is the most enticing spot to try to single a horse. I mean, I'm glad you pulled up the pace projector because that was something I was going to touch on. I think this horse is going to sit a perfect stalking trip. I mean, the horse ran against Just Steel, BU locked, domestic product. Not domestic, it's Dornoch, Sierra Leone. Like, this horse has run against significantly better competition than anyone else in this race. Hades, who obviously last time out surprised, but was a horse I touched on that had been looking really good. I didn't think the horse would obviously beat Fierceness, but nonetheless had looked very impressive in the effort beforehand. I just think, look, gets Gaffleone aboard again. As you touched on, the horse took a really nice step forward last time out. After not, I don't want to say necessarily, like a complete and utter dud, because obviously the horse ran against monsters, but you still would have expected better than that 7th place effort. So it was nice to see that rebound off that mini layoff. The horse is working very forwardly as well. I mean, again, for me, I just don't want to overthink it. You have a relatively open field, more so because of the lack of talent than because everybody's so good, like these 2 races we covered prior. I love domestic product in this spot. I think the trip works. I think this is the class of the field.
Well, and I'll tell you what, definitely from a company line perspective I completely agree with you in that race. I think there's a lot of different things you can give domestic product kind of the benefit of the doubt on in the Remsen. He was close to a hot pace. Obviously, Dornoch was as well, but it could just be a superior animal. But there's no Dornochs in this race, and that's just how it is. Sierra Leone, of course. Yeah. Coming back to doing what he did. Shout out to the boy of the HHH Racing Podcast fan club for Sierra Leone. But and then the mud as well, mile and 1/8. I think that last race in the Holy Bull really showed that this horse has potential to be very good. And the fact that there's going to be a lot of speed up front, I think domestic product could really trip out in a spot like this. And that's not necessarily saying that he's a better animal than No More Time, albeit the numbers are a little better based on buyer's perspective. I just think he could really trip out in this spot because No More Time is definitely talented. That last race in the Sam F. Davis should tell you exactly why. The horse went 46-3 for the opening half mile on the lead while still being pressed by horses to his side. You had Agate Road, who came not even from the clouds. I mean, he came from the ISS all the way in the back and was flying at the end, only beat by 1.25 miles. But that really showed how good I think No More Time actually is. The horse is working absolutely forwardly, and Jose D'Angelo has been absolutely lights out at this Tampa Bay meet. 26 for 84 on the win end, winning at a 31% clip. And Jose D'Angelo has always been talking about, he's had good horses in the Preakness and stuff like that, but the Derby is the one he's always wanted, and I think this is going to be his best shot this year. No More Time, obviously winning the Sam F. Davis, you could argue that he needs second to get in the Derby and on points and stuff like that, obviously with the whole California situation, which we won't touch on. But No More Time is very, very good, and I'm just dubious about the pay structure, guys. Charlie, you have this horse in second. No, I know that's why you do not like him. So I'll go to you, kind of touch on No More Time, as this really is, the horse that a lot of people are going to look forward to winning the local prep.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with the field in that Sam F. Davis and the way that he did it, with the trip that he kind of got. I wasn't blown away by it. I just felt a little more inclined in this race to kind of try and take some horses that are kind of shipping in with a little more kind of well-meant rather than just kind of based off of a little bit of a one number. I went with this is the Sam F. Davis.
I just wanted to show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Agate Road's all the way back here, guys. I mean, going really fast up front.
Look at he's being
absolutely ahead. Yeah, he's coming. That's a good one, actually. I like that. He's coming from Gulfstream that's close to Tampa Bay. But No More Time does away with all challengers. I mean, you'll see there's really no horses that were heading him that finished anywhere near maybe West Saratoga. But look at everyone else. Everyone else is all the way back here who was running with No More Time. And Agate Road, who was a horse that came from the turf to the dirt, closing again from Gulfstream in this race. I just think people are going to say, "Oh, he got himself on the lead." I think it was a little better than what it was before. But no, I'll let you touch on. You do have a horse that none of us have in there for third.
Yeah, I just threw in good money. Kind of back to my point. I just want some kind of fresh faces in here, and this is definitely a horse I can improve. I don't think Irad's going to hop on if this horse can't run. And even though he kind of beat a weak field last time, and the favorite kind of had some trouble, and his win was kind of aided by that. I think kind of based off the breeding and for Calumet Farm, I think with more distance, I think this horse is going to improve. So another one that's you got some good connections that are going to be at a decent price. So in races like this, it seems like those connections with horses that maybe aren't as high a quality as some of them in the field, they're able to get up and at a decent price.
I'll tell you what, man, good money according to Racing Down. It's a good 400 to 1 in the Derby right now if you're interested. But because I mean, if he wins this, I mean, he's got to improve. Let's just keep it like it is. Coming off another maiden win at Tampa Bay, just like the horse that you like, right? The one for Chad, Calumet, and Irad picks up the mount. Obviously, Domestic Product ran with Tyler last time, so Tyler's going to keep on this time. I'm sure Chad was very happy with that ride, but a Chad up and comer, second time out, and I'll put his full screen. You want to talk about Charlie, you want to talk about the mage angle, right? This kind of second time out, not really that impressive first time out, but absolutely ran a hole in the wind behind Fierceness last year. Actually, not Fierceness. God, what am I saying? Who would Mage lose to in the Forte? Why did I get those two mixed up? Ran behind Forte in the Florida Derby, then came back to obviously win the Kentucky Derby. This could be that type of angle, but of course, he's going to have to improve to have any sort of shot in this race with a lot of really competitive horses. I'm going 5-10-7. That's Domestic Product, Sturdy, who I actually didn't talk about. I'll actually talk about before we move on.
Yeah, because I have the horse third as well. Yeah.
So I'll touch on real quick. We'll touch on Sturdy before we move on here, guys.
My only angle with Sturdy, which I'm guessing is what you saw as well, was just I know this horse lost a Domestic Product by 4 lengths, but I just really liked that step forward last time out. I understand the horse didn't ultimately get the job done and win, and I get that the horse is still a maiden, but for me, again, it was just, and ran against Locked and Drumroll Please in the effort before that. I just think this is another one that kind of has the Domestic Product angle of running against far superior competition. And again, last time just missed. I think, will this horse win? Probably not. I don't love the 10 gate, but obviously Alvarado aboard means that this horse has got to be somewhat live. And I thought that last performance was a nice step forward.
Well, you want to talk about a horse that is interesting for weird reasons. This horse is a maiden, Charlie. This horse does not want to race. This horse ran third by 20 to Locked in Drumroll Please, then ran it by 4.5 to Domestic Product, and then lost by a half length at Gulfstream Park at a mile and an eighth to Corporate Power. I mean, a horse that's a maiden who's George Weaver's throwing kind of the wolves in here. Not necessarily that it's, like I said, there's any real world beaters in here as of now, but Sturdy is one that really always gives his run off that last 83. I think this horse can really improve. Just a lightly raced, improving 3-year-old who can really step up for a really good trainer in George Weaver. And obviously Rapoli stable, having the ownership is no hurt at all either. But yeah, I forgot about Sturdy, and thank you for bringing him up, because I did want to touch on him as well. I think he's a little bit interesting, if not on the win end, because this would be a definite way to break your maiden. That's for damn sure. But definitely underneath, I think is warranted a look. I'm going 5-10-7. That's Domestic Product, Sturdy, and No More Time in the Tampa Bay Derby. Charlie's going 5-7-10. That is Domestic Product, No More Time, and then Sturdy. Noah's going off the beaten path, going with number 1, Heartened, number 5, Domestic Product in second, and number 4, Good Money in third. But guys, don't go anywhere, because even though the Tampa Bay Derby is done, we have a really good allowance race coming up for you guys last, and then we're going to give our best bets of the entire sequence. And again, just like I stated, for those of you that haven't watched our show as much as Howard's, we cover best bets here. We'll not give out late pick 5 tickets. I think it's a little bit easier and a little bit more approachable for the viewers to approach when we give out best bets, and you guys can play them for whatever denominations you guys like if you guys tag along with us, or you can kind of base yourself off of those doubles and win bets and play, how you desire off of that. I feel like it's a little bit more approachable for the viewers, at least in my opinion. But so that will stay tuned for after this allowance race. So do not go anywhere. We are going to go through this a little bit quicker, as it is an allowance race, but it's still a very good race. As I switch over the Equibase right now, it's a full field of 12 in this race. And I mean, you want to talk about where the heck's the favoritism going to be? We don't have any morning lines. Your guess is as good as mine, guys. Maybe if my fiance Emma brings the hammer down on Where's Emma, maybe that'll be the favorite. But I mean, you can go so many different ways. You see, although we're all going with the number 2, who's either going to be one of, if not the favorite. Number 2, Startup Mentality for Chad, and number 3, Not in a Million Years for Chad, with IRAD aboard. Taking the IRAD tax, as we call it, will most likely be your morning line favorite. But as we bring it up, Charlie, I'll let you touch on first. We all actually have the number 2 Startup Mentality, and I was actually interested. And, we talk about not playing jockey gymnastics, but this is one that was a little interesting that IRAD didn't take aboard this one and instead went on to number 3, Not a Million Years. But what did you like most about the number 2 Startup Mentality?
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned, just simply on the fact that Tom, on his own right, is at a monster meet. And if you look more specifically at Tampa, I mean, IRAD's not someone who really rides at Tampa, and you see how great Tyler's numbers are in the brief efforts he's had at Tampa. So didn't really see that as concern for me, as well as the fact that this horse has had 3 different jockeys in 3 different races, so it doesn't seem to matter. Look, she has the best figures on paper. These last 2 efforts were both great. Ran against Implicated, Sacred Wish. Last time out, ran against Be My Sunshine, who came back to run solidly, and Alpha Bella, who came back to win. So this horse is run against, in my opinion, by far and away the best horses. Again, as anybody, just like how I touched on the last race, the importance against running against class. I think all of these efforts have been solid. Obviously, to win on debut is great, and I don't think either of these last 2 efforts were anything to be upset about. And honestly, I really hope that Not in a Million Years ends up getting the IRAD text, because I would happily get the other Chad Brown, who I think should be the main Chad Brown, and get that better price. I do think it should come down to these 2. Obviously, Not in a Million Years, after that debut, did not go to plan. Last 2 times has been solid. Just missed last time, but obviously the figures are a little lighter, which to me makes sense because the horse hasn't quite gotten it done against weaker fields. Then I'll let you touch on the 11, who was the other horse I had, who, again, I think is interesting. I think that effort last time out was a really nice step forward. And I think it was a really interesting note to me that this horse was 17-1 2 back and then got bet all the way down to favoritism. So I guess a lot of the public also thought that step forward effort wasn't a fluke, and then the horse took another step forward. So I understand that, with the 14 efforts already, this is a much more seasoned horse than the other 2 horses I touched on. But I like that the horse seemed to finally be improving, and instead of just being, a 60 to high 50 buyer, maybe can now start to be someone that's more consistently in those 70s to low 80s, which I don't think is enough to win, but I think the horse is certainly interesting and could be forwardly placed to be in the money.
Yeah, and I'll touch on the 11 in a little bit, but I echo all the same points that you said. No, I'll go to you, my man. Again, Startup Mentality versus Not a Million Years. I feel like this is just the biggest debate: is which Chad do you end up going with in this spot? Do you go with the one IRAD chose, or do you go with the horse that's been against horses like Implicated, Alpha Bella, Breath Away? I mean, running lines based, and obviously speed figures as well. Startup Mentality kind of sticks out, albeit she hasn't won since her maiden win at Monmouth. But I feel like those company lines are nothing short to be not to be short-sighted.
Yeah, I thought kind of at first look they were a little comparable, and then when I looked kind of more at Startup Mentality, I think in the last race I think she had a little bit of sneaky trouble. She broke slow. She got stuck in the 12 post going 2 turns on the turf at Gulfstream, that's a death sentence right there.
Yep.
So I think if you kind of excuse that race, she's moving forward, and Tyler's not a bad jockey to have. But I thought it was kind of in between her and Not a Million Years. So I had in second. It was a little bit slower on the figures, but definitely a horse that you got to respect in a spot like this. And then in third, I've got Where's Emma, which, by the way, dog, how do you not have a horse at 30? If I were Emma, you'd be sleeping outside tonight.
She's not watching this early, right?
But with Where's Emma, I just like the way that she did it last time. Granted, that was a maiden 40, but she did it convincingly. She did it on the lead, which there's not a lot of speed in here, which is why you guys got the 11, who's definitely a threat on the lead. But I think she's just a little bit of a fuzzy. And Shug McGahee, the horses that he's brought to Tampa have been very live. I mean, he's 8 for 19, and these 2 together have been 4 for 8. So I mean, talk about you're hitting at clips like that. And a horse that can hopefully can step up. I'm interested to see what she can do in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, look, hopefully she isn't watching, because I will get shit on for that one. But I mean, underneath the 2 Chads, again, I'm not getting very creative here, other than I have the 11 in second. There's a lot of different ways you can go underneath, And for a horse that ran with surge capacity, who's come back to be a very good horse, and High Stick, who also came back to win as well at Belmont, going 1.25 miles last year. We haven't seen Where's Emma since July 20th, but now she's maturing. She's going into her 4-year-old year for Shug, who's not the greatest off of these long layoffs, but I mean, you want to talk about well-meant horses coming to Tampa. As Noah touched on, winning at 42%. I feel like between the four of us guys, I feel like we have this race pretty well covered, if not barring some absolute craziness happening, is basically what I'm getting at. But yeah, the 11 Damaso, coming off of non-winners of 3 win in the claiming variety. Kathleen O'Connell has run very well at Tampa Bay, and this is kind of her home track. She used to run a lot at Gulfstream, but now is taking her operation over to Tampa. Numbers wise, guys, that 80 buyer fits. Like, it's not that far off, especially underneath. And if she can get a nice stalking trip ahead of these Chads that are going to be coming from a little bit farther back, as I'll show the pace scenario before we move on to our best bets, you'll see the number 11. It does say it's a fast pace. The 11 is going to be just off the speed, being the 2 and the 3 are going to be a little bit farther back. And you want to talk about a little bit of discrepancy, guys. Number 2 is way ahead on time frame numbers, as she is on buyer figures as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're a figures player. That big discrepancy between the 2 and the 3 is definitely one to take into note. But that 105 for Damaso, again, not far off of it at all, especially off the number 3, not in a million years. For a horse that's going to look to get a little bit of the jump on both of those horses, I think is a little bit interesting underneath. But guys, let's switch to our best bets here. I'm going 2, 11, 3. That is startup mentality. Damaso, not in a million years. Charlie's going 2, 3, 11. That's startup mentality, not in a million years. Damaso. Noah's going, again, a little bit off the beaten path underneath. 2, 3, 5. That's startup mentality, not in a million years. And number 5, Where's Emma? But guys, again, thank you guys so much for joining the show. We've had absolutely amazing viewership this entire night. It's been absolutely fantastic. If you could please come over to YouTube, please hit the like button and hit subscribe. It really helps us out and shows us that you guys are really liking the content. And while you're at it, subscribe to the Power Picks. Only $4 a weekend, $15.99 a month, and you get 2 full tracks written up with Pick5 plays, price plays, spot plays, anything you guys need to be successful on a weekend for a very cheap price, a very affordable and a profitable tip sheet. Go to patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. The link is also in the YouTube description. Guys, going to go over our best bets here. And Noah, you are going to go first, my friend. Race number 7, a double, 3-7 over 1, and a man after my own heart going with another double. Race number 10, starting with the 11 in race number 10, who is dynamic. No, that's wait, did I mess that up? I messed that up. It's race number 9, dynamic pricing into domestic product, and the number 1 you liked in the Tampa Bay Derby, Harden. Noah, talk about your best bets.
No,
wait, no.
Kyle,
I was right. I was right.
I'm just because race 9 is the fluffy socks.
Yeah, I'm just a moron. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the first one is a double that starts with 3-7. The 3 is Moved to Gold, who I had on top. And then the 7 is In a Jam, who I think Charlie had on top, who I think is also interesting. It seems like he's kind of found a way to kind of get into the winner circle, and then just pairing him up with Sterling Silver, just because I think he's pretty logical in that spot. It's nothing creative, but a double. We've talked about the doubles and how you can get value in that way. Moving on to another double, I went with the horse that both Kyle and I like. Kyle liked last time, which is Dynamic Pricing. Just based off the gallop out, second time out, I think she's got a really, really good shot in a race that's pretty wide open. And then I've got her paired into Horsin, who I think is going to be a little bit of a price. And then Domestic Product, who you guys had on top and is very logical in that spot. So those are my 2 best bets.
Good luck. I mean, like I said, we share very similar opinions, Noah, in this spot. So I completely agree with everything you said. But as I said, a man after my own heart, going after the doubles, which I think is still the best bet in horse racing around. I think these doubles, pairing them up with horses like Sterling Silver, can really net you some value, as opposed to playing that horse who's probably going to be even money come post time or something like that. When in a double, if you get the winner beforehand, you might get somewhere in the realm of maybe 6, 7, 8 to 1 even, and even with a 1-to-1 shot, depending on who you get to win on the back end. Noah, good luck with your best bets. Charlie, going to go to you here and starting in race number 6. I actually didn't save your best bets, which is what I'm doing right now. But there you go. Race number 6, a pick 3 starting then with 3, with 3, 7, with 1. So a nice, basically a 2-to-1 pick 3. And then race 11, a double 5 with 2, 3 singling domestic product. Charlie, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, so Noah and I kind of felt very similar with that double he did. I just figured I might as well, if I think this is Skippy Longstocking's race to lose, why not try to get myself a little extra value and do that pick 3. So I'm going with him over In a Jam, and then the 3 who we also touched on, you guys liked. Again, we touched on that's a 2-horse race. And then again, we all agree that it seems like it's Sterling Silver's race to lose. So why not go for a cheap, easy pick 3? And again, we don't always like to play, those big pick 5s. So if you want to do something easy on a budget, this is a very cheap pick 3 ticket, and you can press up on it if you agree with my opinions. And then again, going into race 11, I touched on how I think race 10 and 9 are the most exciting races in the sequence, but I also think they're the most difficult, so I didn't want to risk anything. Again, I think domestic product is the class of the field. And then even though I wanted to just do a stone cold double into startup mentality, I just thought because of what you showed, which kind of backed what my opinion was, that it looks like a hot pace where there will probably be a pace meltdown in case, even though the 2 will get the jump, in case it's such a big pace meltdown that the 3 gets there, I don't want to risk getting beat. And since my pick 3 is already a pretty cheap ticket, I can afford in the budget to go too deep in my double on the back end. So those are my 2 best bets.
And that's the thing, right, Charlie? So even though there's 2 low prices in there, if you play that for, if you're a little bit bigger on the budget, if you play that for $20, $30, $40, it's only 2 times your bankroll. So if you play it for 20, you're playing it for 40 technically, but you'll get 20 times what, 8-to-1 or something like that. So that's, you could still work out a very good price for yourself. And no matter which way you put it, especially with that kind of press up type of ticket. So Charlie,
Hey Charlie, I'm surprised that you didn't go with the best bet outside of the races that we covered, because you're 1 for 1 with Chili Flag.
You're a psycho.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I didn't have time to get to those other races. It's a lot easier when you're covering 4 or 5 races to look at the rest of the card than 7. But yeah, you're not wrong.
Hey, we do it for the viewers, people. We got 230 people watching right now. We're doing it for the day.
That's why to bring it a pick 3. I knew this was a big sequence, and everybody's used to me doing exactas and doubles and a win bet on a horse that I thought would be 3-to-1 and ends up 9-to-5. So I needed to be a little different.
Shit happens because you're giving it out, so shit happens. That's the way it goes. But I want to shout out a few people in the chat. Ray Cromley says, "Good luck, Howard and Kyle and friends in Vegas. Greatly appreciate it." Raymond, thanks so much. Scott says, "Great show last night," and he even went back to last year's post show, which is absolutely amazing. Scott, like I said, I don't think I've seen your name before on our show, so I really appreciate you coming out to watch the Tampa Bay Derby preview. But he says, "Cheers, guys. Appreciate all you do." And Todd Harmon says, "Great show, guys. Keep up the good work." Thank you all so much for joining in, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to broadcast this to all of you guys. Again, we wouldn't be here without you guys. So thank you guys so much. I'm going to end this show with my best bets here, guys. And I'm going to key in on 2 separate horses, really 3, but 2 big separate horses in this sequence. Race number 7, starting in race number 7 is the Columbia Stakes. And I feel like no matter which way you go in that competitive race, you're going to get a lot of value. We touched on horses that I thought moved to gold for Chad, winning the Awad, winning it in such a way that I feel very confident having that horse on top. And the number 10 in that race, which I actually didn't talk about since we went through it so fast, Fulmineo, who ran in the juvenile turf behind Unquestionable, only lost to 5 lengths. Granted, did get 11th, but still only lost by 5. Then went back on the dirt. Arnaud Delacour had this horse in the Sam F. Davis last time on the dirt. Granted, didn't do a whole lot of running, but now getting back to what I think is his better surface, and that being turf. I just feel like Fulmineo could be one to sneak under the radar, maybe get a little bit better of a price with Junior Alvarado in the irons. And then, of course, just like everyone else on these best bets, we're keying around Sterling Silver, who's going to be the single in that part of the double. In race number 9, a double 7-1, guys. You think I was going to go through this without giving my girl Elusive Princess a little bit of a nod in this spot? I just think she's going to be a good price. And even playing her to win, anywhere in that 7-2 range, as I touched on when I'm going through the race, I think would be fair value on this horse. Underneath that, maybe 3-1. I think under that is too low for me in a spot where there's so many different ways you can go. But again, for the 3rd time today, I'm going to stand on business. I'm going to single Elusive Princess in race number 9, which is the Hillsborough. And I'm going to single the number. Wait.
Hostvale. Supposed
Yeah,
to be the
Okay,
11.
the number one. That was actually the one horse we
Hostvale.
didn't touch on that I wanted to. I thought Poolside would.
Oh
was
no,
interesting
I was the wrong.
underneath,
Yeah,
but-
sorry. Hostvale. That was a win on Elusive Princess.
While
Okay, that would have been big.
while Kyle's fixing that, actually, the one horse's Poolside was Slim. That's the horse that ran 2 times on the synthetic and popped to 80 buyer last time. But it'll be interesting to see if that horse.
That would have been give that horse anywhere before the show, and then absolutely hammer.
You know that horse is winning now.
Oh yeah, right. Now that I deleted
No, that was
on my thing.
I was saying that no, that was the one horse we didn't touch on that I thought was interesting because I don't think the horse will win. It's a hot pace, but I do think this horse could send from the rail and finish somewhere because last time that horse absolutely freaked and got hammered down late at Gulfstream and then ran going away.
I know what I did. I meant to do that 1-7, of course, with Sterling Silver into Elusive Princess.
Okay, that makes a lot more
sense. Since I ended up going with the
Still
turn
a
double, I
Hostvale.
forgot to change it. Definitely a Hostvale, absolutely. I'm as we call it around here, an absolute moron. But that's the way it goes. But my best bet's are going to be double 310 with 1 and a win on my girl Elusive Princess. But guys, that is going to wrap up episode 65 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. Again, absolute massive audience today. Like I said, we would not be here without you guys. So thank you guys all so much for watching this episode of Bettin and Boozin. But for my co-hosts, Noah Maher and Charlie Freeman, this has been the Kyle Roscoe in episode number 65 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.